right. Our in-studio guest, who we've already had excellent conversations with, Gary Gibson. I asked him here for a very specific reason. As far as, we wanted to talk about USCCA. There's been a lot of chatter on the internet from people that I like and trust, all over the internet, from people that are on our side about USCCA, and it got me curious about some things. So I brought Gary in to talk about it. And this segment is sponsored by Cargo, Cases and Rugged Gear Outfitters in El Cajon. Cargostores.com. Check them out online. They're located at 423 Broadway in El Cajon. If you need to protect your gear while you're on the go, look no further. Cargo has the perfect case for you. From trusted American brands like Pelican, SKB, Seahorse, Underwater Kinetics, and S3 to top-tier imports like Canadian-made Nanook and Italian-crafted HPRC. They've got it all. With over 2,000 models to choose from, you'll find a case for everything. And here's the best part. Cargo keeps hundreds of cases in stock, ready to go, but they also offer custom foam inserts, connectivity solutions, and even branded cases to make it uniquely yours. So check them out. Use 10% to get 10% off. Use GOR either at the store or online. Great products, great prices, and uncommonly good service. Cases and Rugged Gear Outfitters in El Cajon. Okay, so we're going to talk about USCCA. Now, I got to tell you, back in 2017, San Diego County Gun Owners was able to get the sheriff at the time to start issuing CCWs. And we're very proud of the political work that we did on that and the progress we made. It didn't take too long before a lot of the products or companies that offer products that help cover legal costs of someone carrying a gun, not necessarily a CCW holder or any gun owner, but it definitely became more interesting to people as they started to be able to get their CCW. So boom, everybody flew into town. All of a sudden, hey, San Diego, here we are. We're ready to, save the day. I read the writing on the wall pretty quick and said, you know what? I don't want to pick one. I want to just do an analysis of everybody and show you, hey, here are the pluses and minuses. I think if you have a CCW, you're foolish if you don't have some kind of product like this, if you don't have some kind of coverage. But I'm not going to tell you which one to pick. The other thing is we don't have like a partnership program. San Diego County Gun Owners, me personally, I don't have some kind of partnership program with any of these. And I am a member of just about all of them. And the reason I don't have a membership agreement, meaning I don't make money, is because we have so many gun ranges and gun shops that are members of San Diego County Gun Owners and so many instructors. I didn't want to compete with them. I didn't want to have people sign up and then, one of our members lose business because of it. That's not what we're trying to do. We're a political organization. We're an education organization. So we remained agnostic. Now, if you go on our website, if you go to SDCGO.org, there's, or inlandempiregunowners.com .org or OrangeCountyGunOwners.com. There's actually a side-by-side comparison of 4 or 5 of them. USCCA is definitely one of those. Now, USCCA, in full disclosure, they have made donations to San Diego County Gun Owners, but they haven't done anything in 2025. They haven't done anything in 2024. The donations were in the form of sponsoring a table at our gala, and I think they did that for 3 years in a row. But what I'm trying to tell you here is I don't have some kind of financial interest here. I do have an interest in all of our members who, getting a CCW and then being covered because we care, frankly. So I know there were a lot of fights, a lot of arguments, a lot of debates, a lot of, sales, a lot of spy versus spy when it comes to these different groups. And I tried hard to remain agnostic. I would pretty much let any of these groups come up and talk to anybody and say, hey, tell us what's great about you guys. I can tell you that USCCA, I started hearing grumblings. But honestly, I hear grumblings about all of them, so I didn't really pay close attention. But then this past week, I heard kind of a cluster of grumblings from people who have loud voices on the internet. And I don't mean that derogatory. I mean people that have a lot of followers. So I decided, you know what? I want to look into this. I really want to get down to the bottom of it, And the first thing to kick off this criticism of USCCA was a case, the Kayla Giles case, where USCCA, the scuttlebutt around the internet and around town was they didn't cover somebody. They decided, hey, we're going to drop this person. That seemed to be the case that made a lot of people, not a lot, it made a certain number of people rethink USCCA. I didn't really pay that much attention to the details. But now we have the benefit of going back and looking at, because this case has pretty much come to a conclusion. So I invited Gary to come in and talk about the Kayla Giles. Kayla Giles? Yeah. Kayla Giles case, and just analyze it for us and talk about, like, hey, what happened? And let's see, did this actually, did USCCA do something wrong, or is what they did justified? So why don't you give us the background, Gary?
Sure. Kayla Giles is a case out of Louisiana. And you have to understand that Louisiana is a different kind of place with regard to law. 49 states use English common law, but Louisiana uses French and Spanish influences in their law. Not that it's affected their criminal law very much, primarily their civil, but it's a different kind of place. And I'm not a Louisiana lawyer. But I did read the Louisiana appellate court case, and if you want to read that, all you have to do is go and type into Google Third Circuit Louisiana, and you'll get their website, go into their search engine and type in Kayla Giles, and you can bring up the case and read it. It's only 27 pages. I read it a couple of times today just to be sure I had my facts right.
So what's the gist? Set it up. What's the gist? How did this start?
Kayla Giles got married in 2014 to a person that we will refer to as the deceased.
Okay.
So she married the deceased in 2014, and then in 2018...
He wasn't deceased at the time, which, by the way...
That would have still been illegal in Louisiana.
Well, I was going to say, that would have made it an even more Louisiana case. But anyway, we'll keep going. All right,
So by 2018, things are going south for them with regard to their marriage. And they're in the middle of a divorce. And there's allegations on both sides, to the point that both of them get a domestic violence restraining order issued against each of them to stay away from the other person. And that happens in early September, late August of 2018. Now remember, this is 6.5 years ago now. We're talking September of 2018 is where the Kayla Giles case comes out of. Well, Kayla did a couple of things that she probably, in retrospect, wishes that she hadn't done. One of them was tell a friend of hers that she wanted to kill her husband, and she did that in early 2018.
Which, by the way, I think a lot of people going through a stressful breakup or whatever, I mean, who knows? A lot of people say a lot of things, but that's definitely a data point.
I can say that I have heard many, many times my spouse say that perhaps that would be a good outcome in our marriage.
Right. So, but basing it entirely on her making a statement to a friend, not good enough, No, but it's
not
a data
good enough.
point.
But she also asked a friend to borrow a gun.
Now we're getting somewhere.
And this is the beginning of 2018, because the time is really important. Right. The timeline is crucial to this case. So she asked a friend to borrow a gun. She tells her friend she wants to kill her husband. And then things keep progressively getting worse. They have an altercation. Kayla's perspective on this is that he slammed her leg with the door of a car and that she punched him or slapped him after that. That resulted in the the domestic violence restraining orders being issued. As we move forward into late 2018, late August, Kayla buys a gun. Well, there's one problem with that. She went to Texas to buy the gun because she had a CCW in Texas. And so she didn't have to background herself when she bought the gun because she had a CCW in Texas.
So did she have dual residency at some point? Did she move, or did
I
she
don't
get
know.
an out-of-state
I don't know. That wasn't in the opinion. It just said that she was able to buy a gun in Texas because she had a Texas CCW. That is in the opinion.
I don't know. I'm assuming you can get a Texas CCW without being a Texas resident.
But here's the problem. She was under a domestic violence restraining order in Louisiana. She wasn't allowed to own a gun.
Yeah.
And so she bought a .380. And she told people, and a friend testified at trial, that she was afraid of her husband, that her husband had bought guns to the child custody exchanges before, and that she was in fear for her life from him. But that person also said she had never seen any violence on behalf of her husband, the soon-to-be deceased. So now we move into early September, and Kayla starts doing some searches. She also, the same day she bought the gun, she got USCCA CCW insurance. Same day she got the gun, or within a very short period of time after that. She began researching online for justifiable killings in Louisiana.
They checked like her Google history or whatever, and she's doing search history for.
They did, but in order to do that, they had to get a hold of her computer, and unfortunately, that was one of the things that she was convicted of, was obstruction of justice, because she tried to hide her computer that had all of this information on it, and she wound up getting 30 years. Well, just for the obstruction of justice.
Right, and let's back up. So she's doing these searches, and then she has a restraining order against him. He has a restraining order against her. She goes to Texas to purchase a gun because she knows she can get away with it there. She gets USCCA insurance, and now at home she starts doing searches for how to
self-defense, justifiable homicide, right. And there's one other bad part. She tells her friend, and this text message was recovered, that I've deleted my social media history. I'm going to do something that's going to make the news. Can you please go fund a bail funding for me?
Like a GoFundMe. Now, just doing justifiable homicide, you could just be like, hey, I want to get familiar with the laws. But sending a message like that, that's probably, again, another pretty important data point.
It's not one thing in place. It's buying the gun in violation of the restraining order, telling your friend you want to kill your husband, asking them to get a gun, saying you're deleting your social media history. It all looks premeditated from an external point of view at that point in time. So now we move to September 7th or 8th of 2018, and there's a child custody exchange between Kayla and her husband. The husband wants to do the exchange at a police department. She refuses. So the exchange is done in a Walmart parking lot. And there's a Sonics across the street, and a very grainy video is what exists. So they did the child custody exchange. Kayla's daughter is in her car and was a witness in the case. And her husband makes probably what is the worst decision of his life, which is after Kayla's back in her car, her husband walks over to her car and opens her door. Her husband is unarmed. Kayla told the police after she shot him that he was aggressive and moving towards her. The video doesn't support that. In fact, he shot very quickly after he opens her door. And the daughter in the car testified that he was not aggressive. He just opened the door. So we really have no idea why he did that.
Do we know how old the daughter is, or what?
I don't. It wasn't in the opinion. I didn't see that. But what hit an interesting point was she was in her car. Well, guess what that triggered in Louisiana? The Castle Doctrine.
Oh, geez.
Because she's in her car, so she has a presumption that she's in fear.
Because he opened the door.
But it's not. It's a rebuttable presumption. It means the prosecutor gets to go beyond it. Like, well, hold on for a minute. Let's go back to I'm going to kill my husband, and I got to get a gun, and I need bail money, and so they can rebut that presumption. But she is cloaked with the presumption, and so her husband opens the door, and she shoots him in the chest, and he dies. And she stays there, and she gets arrested. When she gets into custody, she's trying to hide her computer in some fashion. And that cost her a conviction on obstruction of justice for that when she eventually got to trial.
She told, I think if I remember correctly, she told somebody, hey, get rid of my computer?
No, it was cryptic. It was just, can you move the flowered bag? Because the computer was in a bag. And so it was real cryptic because remember, all jail communications are recorded.
Monitored, yeah.
And so she can't say, can you hide my computer? She's got to say something different. But this is where USCCA gets involved.
I was going to say, she's in jail now. Nobody knows all the stuff that you just said.
Correct.
You know what I mean? There's very, very limited information.
Nothing.
At this point, all that is known is that she fired a gun, killed somebody that was her ex-husband, or soon-to-be ex-husband, claiming it was self-defense. That's all it's known right now. They don't know that
she's afraid. She was afraid of him.
Yeah.
And, I have to add something because I put this in my lectures when I do self-defense lectures. Husband was 215, 6'1", an MMA fighter.
Ooh.
Kayla's 5'2", 115.
Yeah.
That's a significant physical difference. And so when I tell most people about self-defense is if you shoot an unarmed person, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Unless there is a significant physical disparity that you can't survive taking that first hit. a 300-pound man, a 100-pound woman. You might get away at that point with shooting somebody that's unarmed. But there is a significant physical discrepancy that accrued to her benefit. USCCA steps in at this point, and just so you understand how USCCA works, USCCA has a company called Delta Defense. Delta Defense is who you're contracting with for your CCW insurance, although it is under the umbrella of USCCA. Delta Defense contracts with United Fire Casualty Insurance Company, UFCIC. That is their insurance company who is paying their claims for their CCW insurance. So it is an insurance product.
Right. They fund it. They're the funding arm.
They are. And you have to understand, when you buy insurance, no matter what the insurance is, insurance can't cover you for intentional crimes. They can't, by law, you can't get home fire insurance and then set fire to your house and claim you want the fire insurance company to pay. You can't run your car into a wall because you want to get it fixed and then use your comprehensive coverage for your auto policy to pay it. And there's a conflict here because almost all of these cases start with an allegation of criminal conduct. Who would they be covering if it wasn't an allegation of criminal conduct?
Right.
And so there's an inherent tension there that they have tried to walk the line on, from what I can see, based on my experience with them. And this was the first time that they really got hit with, and I'm not privy to USCCA's internal discussions, but I can see that once all of this information fed itself out, remember, USCCA funded Kayla Giles from the inception. They paid $50,000 to her lawyer. But once all this information came out through the, quote, discovery process, discovery just means the exchange of information in a criminal case. Once all this information came out, I think they came to the conclusion that she got their policy to kill her husband and immunize herself from her premeditated killing of her husband. That's the conclusion that they came to into the process.
And then they basically said, all right, we're done. We're not going to do any more. Right?
They stopped covering her at that point.
How much had they covered her by that point?
$50,000.
So $50,000. They say, hey, wait a minute. There's all this evidence showing that we think that this was thought out in advance, and so we're not going to cover you. We're not going to spend any more than this $50,000 we already spent.
Well, it's got to work backwards. I mean, the insurance company got this information. It's like, hey, we've got rules. We can't pay for intentional criminal conduct.
No, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Is there an insurance company, self-defense insurance company out there that does not have this clause?
No. It's illegal. You're covered by the insurance commissioners of all 50 states. And in fact, people that have a subscription method where you're paying money to a group who then assigns you a lawyer that's not an insurance-based program, is basically a member-funded program. People that have that are starting to run into problems in states that think, we don't care what you're saying, you're providing an insurance product. Yeah, you can call it whatever you want.
If it walks like a duck and it quacks and it swims like a duck, it's a duck.
So I know that one program has gotten into hot water in Connecticut, and now they're being supervised, at least there's a consent decree or an agreement that they're being supervised by the insurance commissioner in Connecticut, notwithstanding the fact they say they're not providing insurance. And I think that that's going to happen in other states. I just see it happening. The insurance commissioner is going to want to regulate the market.
It's a distinct possibility. And okay, so USCCA has now said, we're not giving you any more. We're not doing this case anymore because of what we've uncovered. We're not doing the case anymore. And at that point, that's when things kind of blew up. Like, well, wait a minute, they're not covering her?
Well, I have to tell you, as a criminal defense lawyer, if I'm $50,000 into a case and establish a relationship with somebody and are driving their case, you're really pantsing me and that client at that point when you pull the funding. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to be your lawyer. It may mean that. It just means they're going to have to come up with a different funding source to pay the money. And these are expensive cases. I was just privy to information that USCCA paid out almost $500,000 on a case in Northern California recently, on a murder case in Northern California. That's a staggering amount of money. But, an average murder case in San Diego now that's complicated with complicated forensics is going to take a couple $100,000 in order to roll this to a conclusion with experts, with investigators, and paying for the lawyers. And so, when I look at it, I'm disappointed that USCCA pulled the funding when they're that far into a case. I get that. But I also get the inherent tension that they believed at that point that their insurance product was being manipulated by the member.
Well, and so they believed it was manipulated. What was the result? We're now we're at a point where we can see not the results of one case but two cases. So the result of her case, what happened?
Kayla goes to trial and she gets convicted of second-degree murder, not first-degree premeditated murder, second-degree murder, and she gets convicted of obstruction of justice for trying to hide her computer. And the penalties for that was staggering. I think she got life without parole for the murder and plus 30 years consecutive, which means that the judge was not too impressed, consecutive, on top of her life without parole, not at the same time.
Now, what's second-degree murder? Define what, someone has no idea what you're talking about.
Well,
what
in California, there's 2 degrees of murder. The first-degree murder is premeditated and deliberated murder. Second-degree murder is all other murders where there's an intent to kill, but there's not manifested a premeditation and deliberation. Like it was instantaneous. You pissed me off, and I took my gun out and shot you in a half a second.
So what does that do? The fact that she was, what does that do to the case? What does that do for as far as USCCA's decision?
Well,
I don't know if negative or either way.
I don't know if it does anything for their decision. I think she had to replace her original lawyer. She went to trial with a different lawyer. That certainly could have impacted her ability to defend herself. But USCCA was in a bad position. And again, this is a really unique type of case. I haven't heard anything other than the Kayla Giles case being used to beat on USCCA. I mean, I hear it too. I watch the same videos you do. I watch the same influencers. And so Kayla Giles keeps coming up over and over and over and over again. And it's 6 years old.
Yeah, well, and there was a second case, though, too, where she actually sued USCCA civilly, saying, hey, you guys didn't fulfill your contract.
Well, I mean, the contract says that we don't cover intentional criminal conduct. So she lost that case pretty quickly, civilly. But she went to a appellate court, and that's the case that you can read if you want to go in the 3rd District Court of Appeal for Louisiana and type in Kayla Giles. You can read it. If you want to read it, they turned down all her arguments. And the one they turned down really quickly was sufficiency of the evidence. She made 6 claims, if I'm remembering right, that went wrong with her case. The one that has the most meat to it is basically 2 jurors were left on the jury that shouldn't have been left on the jury. She wanted them kicked off. They were actually kicked off, but she had to use challenges to kick them off, as opposed to the judge kicking them off. And legally, it just meant that she probably should have gotten some more challenges, or those jurors should have been kicked off by the judge. That's the most interesting argument. The appellate court absolutely quickly cut out her sufficiency of the evidence by saying, you threatened to kill your husband, you bought a gun illegally, you said you're going to need bail money, you're going to delete your social media, you're trying to hide your computer, you shot an unarmed guy. That's enough for a jury to convict you.
Now, and you're an attorney, and you've worked with USCCA how many times?
4 times in county. Yeah.
4 times. And how has your experience been with USCCA?
Great. I mean, all my cases with USCCA have been paid very quickly. Most of the cases, I've actually been in touch with USCCA the same moment or very quickly in the arrest. In fact, on 2 of my cases, my bondsman beat the person being arrested to jail. That my bondsman was at the jail when the person arrived at the jail.
And your cases haven't been, there's been some hair on the deal, as they say. I don't know how else to put it, but you were just telling me about a case where a guy, there was clearly some illegal activity, and he still got covered. Do you want to talk about the details of that a little bit?
A little bit. Guy got in a road rage. He gets arrested, and during the course of the road rage, they search his truck, and in his truck, he has got a lawfully purchased pistol, but he doesn't have a CCW. So he's carrying a concealed weapon in his vehicle in violation of California law because he doesn't have a CCW.
And also used, to defend himself,
Well, he had bear spray in his car, but
which is illegal.
But
they didn't charge him.
They did not. All they charged was the gun, and they walked away from the road rage stuff, and they charged him with the gun in the glove box.
And that case went swimmingly. I mean, as far as your relationship with USCCA.
Sure, USCCA paid me before we actually got to court in order to defend him, and we managed to work through the road rage stuff. But now we're going to court for the gun in the glove compartment. Well, that's not part of Delta Defense's UFCIC's remit. They're not there to prevent you from illegal weapons possession. Right. It's a self-defense insurance.
Now, let's talk about that, because I think that's an important difference. There's kind of this misconception where it's like, well, if you're breaking the law, they'll drop you. That's not exactly it. If he were robbing a bank, if that was what he was using this defense insurance for.
Plotting to kill his wife.
Plotting to kill his wife, but not if he were breaking the law by carrying a concealed weapon illegally.
But, this had a happy ending because USCIC sent it back to Delta Defense, and USCCA Foundation paid this. Oh, wow. They're paying for his criminal case out of USCCA.
Nice. Now, how would you describe, is there a legal terminology, or how would you describe the difference between I'm doing something, normal, I'm driving down the street, but I happen to have an illegal gun, versus I'm robbing a bank and have an illegal gun? You know what I mean? Like, how do you describe that difference? Like an intentional, or how do you describe that difference between breaking laws?
How do I describe it? I describe it as, silly putty, sticking your hand into it and not knowing what you're going to grab. It's so loose. We just don't know. Each case is individualized by facts.
Yeah.
USCCA has to make a decision, or UFCIC has to make a decision on coverage instantaneously. And usually they talk to the lawyer and say, what do you know about the case? What are they saying? Because we don't know what the cops are saying. We don't have reports yet. But we do know what the defendant is saying, or the person arrested is saying, or the person about to be charged. So all we can go with is, what are they telling you? What were you arrested for? Then we can go back to the insurance company and say, this is what he was arrested for, and this is what he's saying. It looks like a straight-face self-defense case. Yeah. It doesn't mean it's winnable. It just means that there is enough to say, yeah, you know what? This could be self-defense.
Here's I got to tell you, from the very beginning, San Diego County Gunners, we defend people. Excuse me. We stand for gun owners who are sane, trained, and law-abiding. The law-abiding section, does that mean they're what if they've ever jaywalked? Then no. We have to use some discretion and some subjectivity when it comes to law-abiding. But I got to tell you, I'm a member of USCCA. I pay for it. It's not comped. Again, I work with Adam, who's the local rep, who's wonderful. He's been supportive. He's been far more supportive than any of the other organizations. But, the support we get from USCCA, number one, doesn't go into my pocket. It helps support the organization. And number two, it's not make or break support. In other words, if they didn't support us, we'd still be an organization. It's not like we're, hanging on, thanks to the support of USCCA. Still, they've been extremely generous, and Adam is wonderful to work with. So I've had a great experience with USCCA. I've turned people over to you. You've worked with people that are covered by USCCA. They've been wonderful. So I haven't had any customer service issues, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I haven't used any of their training. I don't really care about it. But my understanding is that the folks that have taken their classes have said that they're wonderful. But here's where I'm going. There is a way for someone to be covered who is intentionally trying to harm somebody, who's breaking a law that is, horrible, right? I mean, it's not jaywalking, like they're trying to kill somebody. There is insurance that'll cover that. I'm not looking for that. I'm not going to go kill somebody. I might defend my life, and that may end, because someone's life because of lethal force. But I didn't know all this about Kayla Giles and her case before about 3 or 4 days ago. And the idea that she was clearly going beyond self-defense, that she was trying to end somebody's life, her soon-to-be ex-husband, and that she was doing it in a way that is morally wrong, is legally wrong, and that 2 separate court cases, a criminal court case and a civil court case, have both confirmed that. I get what you're saying, Gary, that, maybe from a PR standpoint or just from a procedural standpoint, they probably just should have kept funding this case and kind of, turned the other way. But I kind of like the fact that they said, hey, you know what? We're not going to fund this person. And it's not a money-making thing. I mean, the fact that, let's say they saved $150,000 or $200,000 or $300,000. Let's say they saved $500,000 on this case. This is one of the few cases that they refused. Oh, by the way, they didn't go back and try to collect the $50,000 that they spent. So even if they saved $500,000, that didn't make or break USCCA. I got to tell you, I'm not holding it against them. That they decided that Kayla Giles, apologize, I can't remember how to pronounce her name, that she didn't fit the criteria, that she broke the terms of the contract, and that they didn't feel comfortable covering somebody who looked like they planned and then executed someone's murder. I don't hold that against them.
And USCCA, you said something really important. They paid $50K out. They did not seek reimbursement of that $50K from Kayla Giles.
Right.
They just walked away from it, and that seems to be something that I hear from people in the classes that I teach too. That while USCCA is going to, once I get convicted, if I get convicted of anything, if I get convicted of a lesser included offense, if I get convicted of obstruction of justice and I win my murder, then you're going to say it's intentional conduct and you're going to recoup. As far as I can tell, based on what USCCA says, they have never in the history of their organization, thousands of people represented, ever recouped money.
Oh, is that a clause? Yes.
Is it a
But
clause in their
is it-
contract? Yes.
Is it a clause in every self-defense insurance policy?
Yes.
Yes.
And here's the thing: they have the ability to do it, but they've really refined their contract. And they said they will never recoup unless they are ordered to recoup by the insurance commissioner or other executives of the state. So they're not going to recoup money unless they're told by their governing bodies to recoup the money.
Interesting.
And they haven't been.
I have to say, as a policyholder, I'm personally thankful that my monthly dues were not going to Kayla's beyond the 50,000. I'm okay with them not funding the rest. Personally,
I think I am. I just don't think that is a good use of money. I don't think it's a good precedent to set. Again, I get like the optics of it. Like they wouldn't have to put up with all this. But
right? Like in hindsight, it's 2020.
In hindsight, they probably wish they would have paid a few $100,000 just to avoid the slander, slander of the attack on them.
I'm not totally convinced either. Now, listen, everyone out there who's criticized the USCCA, you guys have valid complaints. I'm not going to try to convince you. I'm certainly not going to question anything about what you're saying. Everyone has to, live life through their own perspective. That's fine. But I'm not entirely sure. If it wasn't Kayla, it would have been something else. There seems to be something else behind this USCCA criticism. It doesn't seem to be this clear cut that they saw what happened with Kayla and made this massive decision. That doesn't seem to be. It just can't be the motivator. Well, I'm not going to speculate on what it is, but
I will.
Go ahead.
The motivator is that other companies want to take their market share. USCCA is the big dog, and there's a lot of money in this business. And so, if you beat up USCCA, people are still going to need coverage. They're going to come somewhere else, and you might be the person they come to.
Yeah, and there's two things about that. First off, we as a community are extremely good at making mountains out of molehills. Like if I got to hear another debate between, which is better, a 9mm or a 45. I mean,
the one that's in your hand.
Well, it's clearly a 45.
Yeah. We are excellent at doing two things. One, making mountains out of molehills, and two, eating our own. And I'm tired of that. I just don't want to participate. The idea that people are attacking USCCA as if they are somehow harming the community or bad for the community, I just don't understand it. I think it's a huge mistake. I've had a wonderful relationship with them. Like I said, Adam, our local rep, is great. I'm absolutely intending on sticking with them. One of the big reasons I want to stick with them is, I know a handful of lawyers in San Diego, here in California. I want those attorneys working on my case if I ever get into a self-defense situation. You're one of them, Gary. You know what I mean? Like, I want to make sure that the attorneys that I know and trust here in San Diego are the ones that, that are defending me in court. I don't want somebody I don't know. And I have relationships, San Diego County Gun Owners Radio. We have relationships with attorneys, all over California. We know some of the best defense attorneys out there and who work with USCCA and I think others, but, USCCA. And that's one thing that's extremely important to me. But I don't know. I don't understand it. I'm glad I better understand what's going on with USCCA. Again, they've been great.
You said something at the beginning, which is understand the product that you're getting.
Yeah.
If you don't think that USCCA is the right product for you, then understand the product that you're buying to replace them. For example, USCCA is covering gun violence restraining orders. They're paying me for a gun violence restraining order case. Now, we're seeing a lot more gun violence restraining orders coming out of California. So if you get a criminal case in a GVRO, be sure that your provider is paying for the GVRO, or else you're going to have to go hire your own lawyer.
Right.
An additional thing about the GVRO I'd like to throw in there that you haven't talked about is that there's a fallout. If you have a GVRO issued against you and you happen to have a CCW, there's an additional punishment of 5 years.
You have if you get a GVRO issued against you, you have a 5-year denial from the date the GVRO expires. So you can't get your CCW back for 5 years after the GVRO is gone. Yeah. So it's a huge imposition. Also, USCCA covers civil, cover up to $2 million in civil. If you shoot somebody, I can guarantee you some lawyer is going to be suing you.
And there are a lot of the products have a lot of these, but I don't want to go too deep into. I mean, I can tell you that. Like I said, we've had a great experience. I know one of the other criticisms is, when you call, you don't talk to an attorney directly. You talk to someone at a call center. I don't think there's a single example where that's worked against anybody. In other words, I don't see that that's something that's made or broken a case.
I know my experiences have been that the people that are calling the call center are generally the family members of the person who's insured because they're in custody. They're in police custody. It's rare that those are the people that are calling. Yeah. And so, I agree with you. I haven't heard anything about that.
Which I think is another mountain out of a molehill.
Gary, how much would you charge to sit at a telephone, 24/7 to be on call? What would that do to my rate to have you on?
Yeah, if we put you in a call center, what would your hourly rate be?
Well, your rate would be less than Michael's. So because Michael will call me all the freaking time,
I do,
and you would only call me when you're in trouble. But no, it would be really expensive to have me answer your calls alone, 24/7.
But the important part is I understand why a firm that has attorneys, manning the phones. I understand why they would try to make that why they try to differentiate themselves from USCCA.
Yeah.
But I think it's also important to point out that it has never been a factor in any case.
I agree.
Not a negative.
I agree with what they're saying. You are not covered by attorney-client privilege when you call the USCCA call center. You are not.
Right.
But
that's true.
But I don't know if that's ever been an issue, and I agree with you on that.
If it has, someone correct me. The other criticism that comes up a lot is the fact that one of their spokespersons, people, whatever, they've had Tim Kennedy do a number of things. I agree with people. I'm very unimpressed with his views on Second Amendment and the statements he's made, and I hope they don't hire him back. But as far as my experience with USCCA, I don't see it. I think I'm as unbiased as anyone is out there, or can be, who's had firsthand experience with USCCA, and I think that people are overreacting. I don't understand why they're splitting from USCCA.
My opinion is if you have the coin, buy a couple of products. If you think USCCA is not going to cover you, then hire somebody else and keep USCCA. It's just find the products that fit the breadth of coverage that you are going to need. And if you don't have coverage, and I don't care who you purchase somebody, because you are at risk. Your family's at risk. Your livelihood's at risk. Your house is at risk. Everything you own is at risk in a self-defense shooting.
I agree with you. What else, Gary? Anything else?
That's it. Well, fake news.
Yeah.
It's hard for you to get through some of these things. Be sure and screen out opinions as opposed to facts.
Well, yeah, I think so. And I mean, I think we've given some facts and opinions here, but I just wanted to share my experience. And here in California, with the relationship we have and the experience I've had and the looking into it that we've done and the results of this Kayla Giles case, I think work in USCCA's favor. So, Alicia, got anything to wrap up?
Just one thought that I had as we were talking about it, the whole thing with the Giles case, they are making a big, they're choosing this as their landmark case to kind of really bring home the whole idea of you'll be denied if you are convicted, kind of a thing, right? Kind of taking similar concept to the guy that we had the home defender up in L.A. last November.
Right.
They made it. There's a big, huge explosion made in the news about they pulled his CCW. I'm curious, why are they picking this as their landmark? If you get into an incident, they're going to pull it. as part of, or at least suspend it.
Well, if you get
pending-
arrested for a felony, they're snatching your CCW.
Right. So it's just, I just find it curious that they are choosing this to be their hill.
I've kind of wondered that too. Why pick this Kayla Giles case? And I think that it's one of the very few. I think there's one or two other cases that I reference, and maybe we'll talk about those in coming shows. But this was the big one. I think that I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if hey, here's the opportunity. This is where we're gonna drive the wedge.
Well, my prediction is that the Louisiana Supreme Court may reverse her conviction, but it won't be because of the sufficiency of the evidence to convict her. It'll be because of some procedural issues, like 2 jurors shouldn't have been on the jury.
Interesting. Okay. All right, we're going to end that discussion. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Gary, how do they get a hold of you? You got a website or something? I just turn on, I have this enormous light and I project it onto a cloud and you come swooping in,
It's
and
usually it's a backlit single digit.
Yeah, well, it just says GG, and all of a sudden you come swoop in and I say, hey, I forgot to say thank you, and you say you never have to. It's the whole thing.
If you type into Google Gary Gibson, Attorney San Diego, the first hit will get you my bio.
Cool. Thank you, Gary.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. I'm Michael from Gun Owners Radio. If you liked what you saw, please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and make a comment. Help us out. Go to gunownersradio.com. Thanks for watching.